Hey, good day. This is Greg Lewis, City Manager here in Lebanon, New Hampshire. Welcome to Lebanon in Depth. We're going into the seasons, and of course we finished Thanksgiving, and now we're preparing for the holiday season over the seasons we have ahead of us and the celebrations and into New Year's. And as we do this, we think that it's very important to remember that we need to pull together and let no one be left behind. And that we should, as a community, look to make sure everyone has basic needs, physical needs. They have emotional needs, spiritual needs. We need to pull together to meet all those needs. A very complex situation. In order to do that, everyone has a role. Our city has a role. Our partners in the city, which we'll talk about during our meeting today, have very important roles for us. We're going to focus mostly our attention today on our role in trying to pull together and make sure no one's left behind, and that we respectfully and with value provide the service and assistance to people who might find themselves, and we all could find ourselves in situations where we might have needs that for circumstances of life we can't meet them. So my guests today are our leaders in our effort to meet the needs of human services in our community, to have a sustainable and resilient community where individuals can face the tough times that sometimes we encounter in our lives and meet them and come through it and move on to a better place. Our leaders today that join us, our Deputy Manager, Paula Maville, from my office, who has been instrumental in providing leadership on how we might globally approach the area of human services. And then Lynne Goodwin, our leader from our office itself, who is very much a very key central figure in every day in providing the services to meet the needs of the parties that come into our program of human services and digital assistance. So I think we'll open up by talking a little bit about background ourselves. Some of us that we've been here before, but I think it's good to refresh ourselves of how we got here today and what's been happening since we last talked to the public about human services. So Paula, why don't you start off by kind of giving a little background on yourself a little bit and how you. Here we are in the Christmas season. Okay. Doesn't feel like Christmas because I feel like we're working ourselves to death.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's already December. It's crazy. So I started with the city 28 years ago. What brought me around to be able to help administer human services was the fact that my mother, Donna Hutchins, was a longtime director of the welfare program in the city. And at one point in time, I was fortunate enough to be able to actually work with her, learn from her, and now share my knowledge in how she managed things. I think it was very, very efficient under her. And I think most of the people who had the privilege of working with her definitely agree with that. So that's what brought me back around kind of full circle into where I once was on a limited basis and able to do everything that's happening now.
That's great. Lynne, now I just love the fact you're here with us, and every day I have such confidence that I know you're over there. I know you're going to be really, exercising the professional responsibilities, but the personal involvement in trying to communicate with people and see where we can go. Lynne, what your background in terms of where you come from and how you got here?
Yeah, I've been a social worker in the Upper Valley for 25 years. I started out in the late 80s at Hannah House in Lebanon, and in fact that's where I met Paula's mother, Donna, and she was a role model and a mentor for me. I was just starting out in my young 20s. And then when I got my master's degree, I went and worked for Casey Family Services as a foster care and adoption social worker, and was there for 18 years before they closed at the end of 2012. From there I did a brief stint at Lebanon Area Head Start, starting up a home-based program for 3 to 5-year-olds that were on the waiting list for the classroom program. And it was during recruitment activities for Head Start that I learned that the city had a temporary vacancy in the Human Services office, and I stepped in to fill that need in May of 2013, and I'm still here.
That's great. And as far as myself, I mentioned on the program a couple of times, I don't think I've gone in great detail because My wife said, well, you just go too much detail and stuff. But basically, I started out my life after I really was kind of a lost soul. And after I graduated from law school, I don't know really why I was in law school at the time, and others also wondered why I was in law school. But I was there and nevertheless graduated. And when I got out, though, I had to do something. And the question is what? And I thought the first thing would be to help people that really needs help, that don't have money, and that really, I come from a background of people that really don't have a lot of money. And I would try to do that. And I opened some doors up and became basically a legal services attorney by joining VISTA, which is Volunteer in Service to America, where I volunteered to be of service. And they assigned me in that program to Black Hills Legal Services in Rapid City, South Dakota. And when I arrived there, I was, what am I supposed to do? And then you're supposed to go in and help people. And so they put me on the interview shift. And the interview shift was basically, I went in a room and I interviewed people all day long. And they would come in with all kinds of issues. And sometimes there were legal issues with the legal services office, but sometimes they weren't really legal issues, they were personal issues. And oftentimes they involved things like housing, and I don't know how many landlord-tenant problems I must have encountered. There was domestic relations, there was kind of failure to meet their needs in terms of economics, and they found themselves without income. That led to utility shut-off and all kinds of things. And I spent that time, and I was in that interview room a lot. And I also would go outreach into senior citizen centers, and I would sit in senior citizen centers kind of ad hoc. And people would come to me that were there in the center and would come in and sit and visit with me about their issues and their problems. And then I also did that at Indian Service Centers, Indian people, and I would go there and spend time doing that. And I did that for a year and signed up for another year. I was doing it for the second year, and then they made me director of the program. And everyone left, and they made the volunteer the director of the program, and I've been directing programs ever since. I thought I was going to be a lifetime director of legal services and spend my entire life helping people who had no money. And that was really my full intent, and until I found the second love of my life, which was municipalities, which led me into municipal work as an attorney and as a manager. So it's funny how life is a circle. That when you started out, and as we're talking here today, the people that you assist every day, Lynne, that Paula's mother assisted for so many years, and Paula now has come around assisting and back in. I started out assisting people, and it seemed like quasi-legal because it sometimes it wasn't really a legal remedy for their needs. It was more trying to have some communication and trying to put them in touch with resources. And so I became the person to talk on their behalf because they may have a difficult time with communicating. That being said, that kind of gives you a sense of the three of us. And I think that there's many other people like us in our partner agencies in the community, which is a delightful thing to have such an array of partner agencies, whether it be Lisbon or Tri-County or whether they be WISE or all these fine partners of people in the West Central. I always want to say West River because that used to be more West River Behavioral, but West Central. So with that, I think it'd be good to share for people who may not know and maybe never know about our services, but what our services are. And so why don't we just start there? And you want to do a little globally what our services are, Paula, and then we'll go to a day-to-day operation by Lynne.
Yeah, sure. The state of New Hampshire, through law, mandates communities to serve and protect, to serve and, I'm going to lose my thought. Anyways, we have to help those that are in need.
Yeah.
And the state level does more with federal dollars than they do with state funding. And they administer food stamps, they administer TANF, they administer Medicaid, that kind of stuff. So we are left with more emergent needs, so to say, housing, utilities, food, emergency medical. We're more of a stopgap. We are charged with trying to get people to a place where they become financially able to support themselves and helping them find situations that are sustainable and affordable, so that way whatever income base that they do have puts them on the footing to move forward. So eligibility is determined through standards that compare income to allowable expenses. Allowable expenses are defined within guidelines that we have, and Lynne's job is to ascertain eligibility, looking at a whole array of circumstances within somebody's personal life. It can be daunting, it can be challenging, heart-wrenching at times, but being able to partner with our community in the various aspects that we have available through services that are provided really brings about the ability to meet a full array of needs, which don't go away.
And you know, every state has a different approach to it. And I think it's one of the important features of the state of New Hampshire is that the buck stops with the local community.
Mm-hmm.
That under the way it's set up system-wise, the safety net operation that we have, it really falls upon the municipalities, the cities, and the towns to address and take on that duty and responsibility. Well, my previous employment was New York, and as a manager of a county in New York, that same responsibility was vested in the counties with state funding. And so our funding is based on, our funding that when we do our services is based on the property tax system, the property taxes of the residents of our community. So we are good stewards of the property tax that are raised from our community and use it wisely, but well. And but it has put a lot of pressure on the local community to make these kind of decisions without the full array of all the resources of a state behind us. So I think that's a struggle we have because we're under that pressure of maybe a strained property tax system, but needs exist and they must be met, and that's what we're trying to work with. Now, Lynne, going in day to day, I think it would be a good idea that we share with members of our community what the day, where we're located, and give a picture of maybe a week, what a week looks like, in the office.
Will do. Since May of 2013, the office has been located on the Lebanon Mall above the eyeglass outlet at 24 Hanover Street. And it's in a building with other social service agencies, which is lovely. There are Pathways and Catholic Charities among them. And pretty much applicants find it easy to access, given that it's so close to City Hall and the advanced transit bus route.
Just take the bus on and get off of City Hall.
Yeah, and when folks call for directions, pretty much everybody knows where Lebanon Village Pizza is, and then it's easy to direct them from there. The office is open Monday through Friday. I have appointments in the morning from 9 to 12:30. We're closed from 1 to 2, and then walk-in hours are every day from 2 to 4. And a typical week really varies. There's a real ebb and flow to the need. So some weeks can be busy and some weeks are very slow. What works best is when clients call ahead of time and schedule an appointment, and at the appointment come prepared with a completed application and the supporting documents to verify the information on their application. If folks come during walk-in hours, that's not always the case. They will start the process then with the application and then have to return for a second appointment, bringing verifications. Each application is a thorough process of gathering as much information as possible about each applicant and their household. And then the needs assessment is very detailed in terms of trying to figure out total household income and allowable household expenses. That said, every applicant is treated on a case-by-case basis, and we try to get the full picture of what their story is and their lifestyle is, what brings them to this point of needing to ask for assistance. And sometimes exceptions are made to allow an expense that might not be allowed for somebody else because it really is a unique circumstance that has put them in this position of being stressed and unable to meet their needs on their own.
Yeah, because one of the things we have tried to emphasize in all our engagement with members of the community is to recognize people truly in an individual and personal way. Doesn't mean that people need not be accountable. People we're all accountable. We all are accountable for everything we do, and so we all have consequences to our choices. But it's kind of the thing, and I love it the way we do it, is that, when I say it all the time, and I get people probably so tired of hearing it, but really we want to be soft on the people around the table in the sense of building relationships, those soft humans relationship skills, by eliciting and listening and bringing out and making people's comfort level so that they give full disclosure, and that helps us problem solve with them together. And then, but we really have to be very analytical on the table to look at the information that we have and to determine eligibility and then determine what the need be. And sometimes they can be difficult, and choices that have to be made together. From our point of view, when trying to administer a program in a fair and respectful way, and them from an individual point of view having to live with consequences of choice and what might be available. So it's not an easy task we have, and as I hear what you do, Lynne, and what Paula's described for me, it seems like it seems to be very challenging in the work, and I think that people value that we're willing to work with them on the challenge. I mean, sometimes it's hard for them because they're in a crisis situation.
Exactly, it is.
Right.
And many
How
folks
they're
come
feeling
in and
about it.
say how difficult it is to be in the position of asking for assistance and telling their story. And we try to set up a supportive, compassionate atmosphere at the office where they're comfortable sharing as much information as is necessary for us to do a detailed assessment of their needs.
And I think you touched on a really good word when you use the word accountable. And the guidelines that outline how we can determine eligibility do offer some discretion. And I think the state law makes that possible because it's really not cut and dry. There's so many unique circumstances. You would like to think that, when somebody comes into the office because they can't afford to pay their rent, they just can't afford to pay their rent. But there's often so many times that things are different for every single person that walks in the office. So there has to be discretion built in. And the New Hampshire Local Welfare Administrators actually put out a book that's called The Art of Local Welfare Administration, because it truly is that. It really takes some understanding, some global understanding, to be able to apply it and do it consistently, but at the same time be able to let people know that there is a level of accountability on their part. We're definitely going to do every single thing that we can do, but they do have a part to play in their own well-being.
Yes, and I think that's really important, that working relationship between the person seeking and we're providing the service. What are the kind of needs that we find people have? I mean, what are the circumstances that we have in our cases?
90% of our direct assistance is housing related. So it's either helping with somebody's current rent or very recent back rent, security deposits to get them into a more affordable situation, or if they're homeless, to get them into a stable situation. Some motel assistance when folks are in transition from homelessness to stable housing. And then when we do refer somebody to shelters, particularly Claremont, we have shelter sponsorship expenses related to that. So 90% of our direct expenses are housing related. The rest is divided up between utility assistance, such as electric payments to avoid disconnection of service, or oil or propane, again, to avoid having no heat or cooking gas. A minimal amount of food assistance, because most folks can apply for emergency food stamps, and we have the great benefit of the food pantries at the Listen Center and the Upper Valley Haven, which Lebanon residents can also utilize, as well as the Listen Center community dinners 5 nights a week. So very few food vouchers have to actually be given out. And then a small amount of pharmacy assistance for folks maybe that are in a period of time prior to their Medicaid being approved and they need prescriptions filled, or gasoline assistance if somebody cannot take advanced transit, or advanced transit can't get them to where they need to be, and they have an appointment that they must get to. For example, they must get to Claremont for redetermination of food stamps or Medicaid. Very important that they don't miss that, and if they have no other means of getting there and they need a gas voucher, we might help out with something like that.
On the housing, since the housing is one of the predominant types of services we provide, what are the examples of the methodologies that we use to try to help people with housing? The different tactics and strategies we might use. Since everyone's different, I presume it would be varying, but we kind of have a menu of possible strategies.
Yeah, we do. So if somebody comes in who is living in relatively affordable housing and they've had a setback and haven't been able to pay their current rent or their most recent back rent due to some other need that had to be addressed, and that after this one-time fix they'll return to self-sufficiency, that's one strategy, is to help them out this one-time fix and get them back on their feet. If somebody comes in and they're behind on their rent and they're not in a sustainable situation, their rent is far higher than what we allow for a shelter expense for that 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom unit, and it's always going to be a sinking ship, they just don't make enough to live in this type of housing, then we try to work with folks to look at relocating to something more affordable. And we've got some great working partnerships with some of the subsidized housing providers and landlords in the area that provide affordable units. And so we're able to network with them and look for available openings, and if necessary, help with relocation expenses, because sometimes you don't have enough money in your budget to save for a security deposit. And then if somebody is truly homeless and needs to get into sustainable housing, then again, we look to that network of landlords and see what's available and what is affordable based on somebody's circumstances. And we partner very much with Tri-County CAP and the Homeless Outreach Coordinator. But basically there's a wonderful triangle of collaboration between Tri-County CAP, the Listen Center, and the city. And between the three of us, usually we can provide a safety net for folks to be able to secure housing or maintain their housing so they're not evicted.
That's really super. That triangle operation. I know that I have had opportunity to visit both the Listen and Tri-County CAP and see how they operate and what they're doing, and it's very impressive. Listen is seems to be it really have got a good approach to the culture of trying to provide help and how to be self-reliant, because that was interesting, because we talk about one of our outcomes in the city is to try to have a resilient and sustainable city, and that would go for anyone in the city to be resilient and sustainable. And I noticed that listening provides these different opportunities for people to do that, and we come in there and match up some of our resources, and then Tri-County can come in some of their programs on utilities and on homelessness and on some of the things they do. Any more thoughts on our utilization of the nonprofits?
Well, the other thing
Paula?
the other thing that we always do, what we strive to do, depending on, again, individual circumstances, if somebody has income that we know is forthcoming, then what we'll often do is make sure that they're a partner in their own plan. So wherever we can, we might set up payment arrangements with the landlord. So if the city's going to kick in a portion, Tri-County CAP's going to kick in a portion, Listen might do a housing helper loan because these people are employed. We would make them responsible for a certain portion of their rent payments coming out of what we know is what is going to come from their income. So we really try to make sure that it's a well-rounded approach, that we're spending the city's money as wisely as possible and keeping people involved in their own plan to get back into a sustainable situation. So it's another thing that we do to help create that. And I think when people see that, people really are pulling for them, but there are expectations that come along with it, they really want to meet those expectations. They really want to help in their own situation and understand how they're going to be able to maintain once they're done receiving the assistance. So I really think it's a valuable component.
It has been. And then looking down the road on our future, I know that we've done a lot of basically trying to keep being more effective, more efficient. We would modify our application forms. You might remark on some of the things that we have been working on as we try to, taking from where we began to where we brought today, the kinds of actions and strategies we've tried to use to improve our service.
Yeah, it's been a real effort to streamline. It's been a real effort to consolidate. It's just been simplification. And at one point in time, I think the application might have been like 26 pages worth of all of this stuff. It's down to 13, 14, but those include forms that you sign for releases. It's not all information that you need to fill out. So, but it really does provide us the broad base of information that is needed to determine eligibility. So it's definitely been much more consolidated, and it's user-friendly. You can get an application, obviously, at the Human Services Office. You can get an application online. We have applications in the City Manager's Office. And so it's just been an overall streamlining of the process.
Anything that strikes you in terms of some of the things that we've been trying to work on, Lynn, that kind of jump out at you in terms of your feelings about how this work is going?
Yeah, the needs assessment has also been refined so that it's more user-friendly and applicants can see how it is that we arrive at eligibility in terms of household income and allowable expenses. And even if having to deny somebody because they had enough income to meet their basic needs, folks understand it when they leave the office. And folks are less apt to be angry or feel like nobody cares when it's broken down in a way that's understandable to them, and they realize that they chose to spend their money in different ways and that the city just can't allow that, and therefore they're not eligible. That said, nobody leaves the office with a feeling of there's no place else to go.
Yeah.
We have the network of partnerships, and referrals are made to see if they can get their needs met somewhere else if they don't meet our guidelines for assistance.
Yeah, so we provide some referral and information for them
Definitely.
to help them try to figure out, maybe possible other approaches they might have. I know you've taken a look at kind of the overall, some of the help that we've provided recently as we were approaching this show. Anything you wish to share, Lynn, about what we provided in terms of dollars or services this recent?
Sure. As of today, in 2014, we've provided close to $80,000 in direct assistance, and that comes in the form of vouchers. So vouchers for landlords for rent, to electric companies, utility companies, the grocery store, et cetera. There's no actual dollars ever exchanged with applicants. It's all done in a voucher system, and then the vendors are set up in our system and receive a check from the city. And of that $80,000, 90% of it was for shelter-related expenses. So rent payments, security deposits,
Yes.
motel assistance, and shelter expenses.
And how many applications were
And
there?
that was for 67 different households.
Well, see, that's really great. Our city council has been very supportive of the approaches that we've been taking to bring it to where we are today with the kind of approach we have, and I think they've been happy about that. I mean, the whole community it's kind of, we all live in a fishbowl together because the whole community is looking at what we do and how we do it, and I think people are very happy with the way we put into this. It's kind of a balanced approach to how things should be. What in the crystal ball as to what might be down the road, Paula? What do you see as possible? What's coming up here in the next year or so?
This coming year, what we would really like to do is have an open house of sorts. It's one of the things that we were going to do in 2014, and it just didn't materialize in time. But we want to really have an open house of sorts to bring in community partnerships so that we get a even better and broader understanding of the services that are provided by our local nonprofits, and how we can, better partner.
Yes.
And have an understanding. We don't want to be in the business of just totally referring out our people, when we have an obligation that should be met, but we should be doing it in a collaborative way whenever we can. And redundancy is something that, we definitely want to address when we can. Because if somebody has more resources to provide the service a little bit better, then that provides our clients with a much better, well-rounded approach to get them, what exactly it is that they're going to need. And the city is forever looking to partner in those kind of things. And one of the services that Lynne finds that is utilized quite a bit is Service Link.
Oh, yes.
And they operate out of the Grafton County Senior Citizens. And it's just a wonderful process that people have available to them, because one of the things that is required by our guidelines once we service somebody is that if they're eligible for any other kind of assistance, they have to apply for that assistance either at the state or the federal level within 7 days of us rendering a decision. And some people just aren't capable of making all of that come together.
Yeah.
And Lynne, as one person, having to serve other clients with a lot of other needs, sometimes we just don't have what's needed to make sure that happens. Being able to refer them to Service Link, that they can apply for Social Security, they can apply for Social Security disability, and even over to the Listen Center with assistance to apply for food stamps. It's just that even minor of a thing, even though it's not a financial, it really, really, really helps. And so finding those kind of partnerships it's really important.
Yeah, the Service Link program is quite impressive. I know in my listening tour over there at the Senior Citizen Center, Grafton, of course they have a number of different locations. They have the one in Lebanon is right back behind the City Hall area, and they were showing me what they were doing over there. That was really impressive.
Yeah.
They had quite an array of ways they could assist people in linking people up with information and services that they might need or should need with the status they have. From your perspective, Lynne, things that you think that we maybe should be considering on the horizon?
The other thing that Paula and I have been doing is looking to revise our human services guidelines, and in particular look at the allowances we have for shelter expenses and other things, because the last time the guidelines were updated was 2007 and rents have gone up.
Yeah.
So we are looking to bring new numbers to the City Council in 2015, and that may directly benefit some of our residents in terms of shelter expenses.
Yeah, and the updates to the guidelines are also going to even bring about greater ability to, I don't want to use the word consistently, like just use it loosely.
Yeah.
Because things sometimes just can't be all that consistent. But it just really takes out some of the ambiguity in it and further streamlines how we can get through a review process. The model guidelines that come down through the NHMA
Yes.
are extremely helpful because it provides something across the state. Everybody's got the same model guidelines that they can start with.
Yeah.
But we're kind of reviewing it and tailoring it and revising the order of it so the flow comes in a little bit better. I think when we're done, people are going to be really happy with the outcome.
I think so too. I think of us, in our city and our approaches to the city, because I think of us in human services. Then I think recreation, they've been trying to work with regards to at-risk youth. They're trying to provide opportunity for families who have, really, they need something more, in terms of getting along in life. You have your physical needs, of course, you have to have essentially, and that's kind of where we're focusing, that housing, proper food, and make sure you have warmth and proper kinds of utilities. But then this other part too, that fits nicely in trying to get involvement for the community, both adults and youth. So that's a nice, and again, the community policing being undertaken by the police department as one of their prime outcomes. So that comes another way of coming into our community and be involved in the community and recognize the supportive nature of policing. So I'm thinking that's a really valuable thing. And some of the volunteer effort and the differing community involvements of the fire department with our firefighters. I mean, that's another interesting thing about our community. But then we really got to marry in all these agencies that we've been talking about and partner in and be collaborative. And I've said that how are we going to do all the things that need to be done? And I think in human services, like in the other fields of our outcomes, is that the sharing between the private sector and the nonprofit sector and the public sector is going to be essential to get enough resources for us to try to have continuity and continue to do the things we have. And if we can find some opportunities for the sharing effort, which we have with sharing of services, and sharing of anytime we could share space, or we can figure out how to do that, or anytime we can figure out how to do sharing information referral, which we are doing, and having that available to get people in contact. I think those are wonderful things to be done. I'd like to see more sharing on technology, so that technology has such a fast pace for replacement, recycle, and in the human services area, there's so many different programs now. It's amazing how many different programs that people are developing in the fields, so that would be of assistance to people. Our libraries are an interesting thing, because the new library of the future have been described as meeting the needs of people that we provide services to through human services. And that involves opportunities in the libraries, the 2 library centers we have. So it's interesting that we have quite an array, and it seems to me we're headed in the right direction of trying to pull together and trying to meet the need. Housing's a real tough deal, because of the high price of housing and the limited availability of affordable housing. So that certainly shows up in the statistics you were citing. That's an important thing that we need to come bring about. And so I think our jobless rate is pretty, on one hand it's kind of, it's pretty low, we have kind of full, but on the other hand, there's a lot of people that use our city as a center, but they don't live here because of the difficulty of that. And somehow I think that there needs to be a better balancing for our community, allow people to live here, not necessarily, be kept up, be someplace else and then come here. As we close our program today, are there areas that, you think we haven't covered today in our conversation that we should make mention of?
I think one of the things that, is the most difficult when you're trying to deal with something at a municipal level, and as you were talking about coming solely off the property tax, is the level of funding that gets cut at levels above us. When there isn't enough funding at the state level, there isn't enough funding at the federal level, our municipality is going to definitely continue to feel the burden, because I don't think we're going to ever reach a point where we don't have people in need. It's difficult because the people that we work with also, it's not the population that doesn't work or doesn't want to work. It's the population of people that the skill level might not be everything that it can be, but there's not enough resources to build those skills or build more skills because programs have been cut at the state level. Also, the state people that we have to work with, they're in Claremont. So
that's kind of amazing. A lot of our state offices that would be providing these programs that are still available are in Claremont.
Yeah.
We used to have satellite offices here in Lebanon, but in an effort to cut costs, the state moved everything back to a central location in Claremont. That said, there are ideas percolating out there to try to have a food stamp outreach worker in the Lebanon area, and I offered up shared space if they'd like to come and use our office once in a while, because the need is there.
Absolutely.
Folks just can't get to Claremont.
Yeah, because I was wondering, how do people get to Claremont? I mean, that's a question mark, I suppose, a rhetorical question. How do you get to Claremont? I know that there's one point they were trying to do a bus service between here and Claremont.
And I think it's still active,
Still
discussion.
trying, I think. They're still trying to pull that off. I mean, our advanced transit system for people that are in need of human services is really an outstanding quality.
Absolutely.
Of having the ability to ride the buses for free without charge, because I think that's really the way to go. They were showing clearly statistically to make a successful transit system that was, nothing's free, but by not having the ridership pay and having the stakeholders and people with the resources, the leadership positions bring money to bear on allowing transit to exist is quite an asset for especially people that we find in the circumstances of coming into our office.
Yeah, because when people are working down at the retail establishments or the restaurants on Route 12A, it's wonderful that we have the businesses and we have those things available. The income that's associated with those jobs isn't obviously the most desirable. So if somebody has to pay to ride the bus, it takes away from the income that they do have available, which then they can't buy food, they can't pay rent. So it's really definitely is a service that I would stand behind 120%.
Yeah, I think it's just, and I really value that a great deal. I'm so happy about our community having that. And I know they're striving to keep on improving to help it become more accessible for people there. Other things that we should mention as we reach the close here, anything else that we think? I think we pretty well covered an array of things that we wanted to cover.
Yeah, I think, well, the other thing we could mention is that while we're updating our guidelines and making all these improvements to the application process, the website.
Oh, yes.
The website, lebanon.net is a fantastic resource anyways, but we're looking to provide more information live, so to say, on the website by providing links directly to the local service agencies that we do partner with or other resources that are available even when we don't partner with them necessarily. That if people do come to the Human Services website, they're going to be able to just move in between places without having to get off of our website and go someplace else. So
that's a really good feature. I mean, I think our website development, Paula has been instrumental in working with Melanie Cooper, our webmaster, about trying to make that the most community-friendly endeavor possible, and I think it shows. There was some really outstanding statistics about how many hits we've had on the website, and as that spreads, that's really great. And for people that are watching, so say, I don't have a computer. I'm not really that good with a computer. I'm not very good at a computer. Is that they could, our libraries are a really good resource for that. You go to our libraries, and our libraries have computers in them that are public computers, and you can use them. And if you want to have some assistance in accessing online at the libraries, the computer, as an example, our website, that they certainly can do that. They certainly can do that at both our libraries. So those are, so don't hesitate about. We'd encourage that, and I think it's good for all of us to get that experience of doing that. I think it'll be more and more user-friendly as we go. It's already very user-friendly. It's going to get more so.
And library staff have called on several occasions trying to advocate for Lebanon residents who are in the library trying to access information about human services, print out applications, and then make sure somebody follows up and gets to me with an appointment. So the library staff have been great to make that connection and make sure it happens.
That's great of them, and that's good. I've encouraged members of the community. I think are pretty understanding of our role here, and leading more also all the time. This show will be another helpful resource for them because that they know that this is a means to get us out. So what, Lynn, in terms of making a contact with us, you talked about that people calling ahead of time. What's the number they should call? We'll put this on the website today. I'll have our good partner CADV put the telephone number for people to call.
The phone number is 448-2944.
So and that's a good place to start.
To start. If you have any questions, I can walk you through the process so that when you do come in for the appointment, you'll be prepared.
And I think that preparation is a really good point that you raised earlier about being prepared before you come in, and that phone call can help you make sure that you have some information about what you should be trying to organize for yourself when you come in here, because that would help you probably speed yourself along. If you did some preparation, what kind of preparation would we generally be talking about that they should be thinking about doing?
Getting the application, completing it, and starting to gather up the supporting documentation.
And the type of supporting documentation, as examples, just a typical types of examples of
Sure.
documentation?
We start with examples of identity verification, so photo ID, social security cards for household members, and birth certificates. And some folks don't have both. That's okay. Provide what you can. And if you're looking for rental assistance, a copy of your lease. And very important is the verification of your income for the last 4 weeks or whatever period of time you're asking for assistance. If you're 2 months behind in your rent, then income for the last 8 weeks.
Yeah, so if you're looking for pay stubs or...
Pay stubs or a statement from the employer.
Statement from your employer.
And we're looking for net pay, what you actually brought home in your pocket to spend on your rent, not your gross wages.
That's
And
good.
then verification of your expenses. So where'd your income go if it didn't go to rent? And a lot of people don't keep receipts, and we understand that. And so there are certain allowances for food and non-food, like your toiletries and household goods, but other things that if you spent your money on cab fare or other things, you would need to provide a receipt in order for us to consider that an allowable
So
expense.
keeping a receipt is a pretty good idea.
Very good idea.
I know you have a box. You could have a box, just throw your receipt in there. I mean,
Right.
you're not going to, you don't have that accounting mode that you're doing that. But if you just put it in a box, and at least you'd have that record. And that's. And I think that people, if it gets tight in your family, that's better. That'd be a very good thing to do. Just to keep track of your expenses.
Yeah, right.
Because when it comes down to it, these are probably going to help you figure out maybe the pathway out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is that even the partnering agencies that we do have require much the same information that we do. So if you get it together once and you know that you're going to be applying for another service like food stamps or fuel assistance or electrical assistance or however else, whatever other stuff is going to be available, that information will be used by more than one agency. So it sometimes I think we've been in situations where something had been filed with the state, but they lost it in between time. So we've been able to rely on other people to give us information where the client might not have it. So that it really is an integral part of everything that all of us do.
That's really good. And I noticed that one thing is clear on the state law is the obligation to repay, that and based on ability to repay. So that's a factor in people's thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
And one thing that Lynne has been instrumental in doing, I really want to give her credit for this, is finding the route to getting us reimbursed for services. There's processes through the federal program of Social Security disability.
Supplemental security.
Supplemental security, thank you, where we can get reimbursed for interim assistance. So if we're helping a client pay rent because they've applied for this benefit under Social Security and we're paying their rent at $750 a month, let's say, and we're helping them for 6 months because they're waiting, they can't work, they have a note from their doctor, they've applied for this Social Security benefit, we would get reimbursed from the Social Security Administration for all of that assistance from the time that we started assisting them until they actually got their first set of benefits. So it's really been instrumental. I can't recall exactly how much we've gotten in reimbursements this year.
It's a little over 10,000.
Yeah, so it's been great to be able to have that come back to the community.
Well, we hope people enjoyed the show today. We want to make sure that people have an understanding of what the human services, what it consists of in our community. And we appreciate the people, our residents, supporting this program and allowing it to happen. And we appreciate the partners who have been working with us to try to provide the services people need in our community. And everyone should be respected, and everyone should be valued in our community, and nobody should be left behind. It's our job to pull together, and we should pull together to the extent of our abilities and capabilities as a community. Some of us have much, and I like it when you're much. We've been given much, so much is expected of us. And so I think for those who are in that position, we should try to do our best. So with that, I think we're going to conclude our show today. I want to thank you, Paula, and thank you, Lynne, for joining. And we hope everyone got a little more information about our programs. And here we are in the holiday season. It's a good time to pull together and help others. And there's a lot of great charities and nonprofits out there that certainly should be supported in this time. And have a really joyous season. We'll see you in our last show of the season, or at our Christmas show. And I'm bringing on the mayors for the Christmas show, our mayor and assistant mayor. So that'll be a nice way to end our year on Lebanon in Depth. Thank you for joining Lebanon in Depth today. Have a great day. It's the best from us to you in Lebanon. This is Greg Loesch, your city manager. Thank you.